Hey everybody, it's Captain Trucker. Welcome back to the channel. I appreciate you all tuning in. Here in Bacolod City today, and in today's video I wanted to talk about appreciating the Filipino mother, as well as just some of my thoughts on vlogging here in the Philippines and stuff like that, stuff I've learned, observations I've made. So, a long time ago, I came out to this country called the Philippines. It's where I am right now. And the first month I was here, I had, I got my girlfriend pregnant, and that was our intention, but I didn't know she was pregnant, and so I left because I was only here on a 30-day tourist visa. So I go back to like San Diego at the time, and I didn't really have much money at the time because I was sort of, I guess, between careers, as they say. And so I used to do a lot of like contract and accounting work and stuff. But anyway, so she calls me and lets me know she's pregnant. And I said, oh, great, that's cool. Guess I got to go find a career now. So I was just sitting in a truck stop one night. And I've told this story before if anybody's heard this story, but I was sleeping in my car in a truck stop because I'm pretty good at that, sleeping in motor vehicles. I sort of created a hobby out of it called frugalism and minimalism. Anyway, so I was sleeping in the truck stop and I saw these semi-trucks go in, and I thought, geez, I spend so much time in the car, I should become a truck driver. And me being the genius that I am, I started driving trucks. Anyway, made 3 trips back to the Philippines that year, and then many others in the following years. But the reason I'm saying that is, man, life's complicated, folks. It really is. And I can only say, sometimes we get on here and we criticize expats, we criticize tourist behavior, understandably. And when you look at the history of the amount of kids that have been left here by servicemen, people in the military and stuff, it's pretty staggering, and but one thing I can say for sure is many of the people in this culture, these Filipinos, man, they really have taken really good care of our kids, all right? And I can't emphasize that enough because it's kind of true, and they really do have a beautiful culture here. And I'm just so proud of like my son and the way he's developing, how respectful he is, how kind he is, because I can remember when I was age 7, I was like a good kid, but I was pretty wild, and I didn't really like always listen to the teachers. And I had streaks of like a temper at that age, and I see none of that in my son, and it's kind of remarkable. Maybe some of it's genetics, some of it's environment, I don't know. But the reason I'm saying that is, I guess over the years on this channel, I'm not really on board with some of the narratives that we've kind of heard in the expat community and in the vlogging world with regards to like Filipino women and scammers, and you hear a lot of victim stories from the expat narrative, men getting scammed out here and men getting into trouble, on and on and on and on. And there's just kind of always, over history, in my opinion, been kind of a negative view of Filipino women by Western culture. And I think a lot of it's propaganda, and I think some of it's victim blaming. I really do, because when you just look at it in reality, when you look at it historically, there's no match. I mean, this country has dealt with so many of us, people like me, expats, foreigners, people in the military coming here, having kids, many of them disappearing, okay, with no support financially or anything like that. And that's not cool. That's not good. Even the US government tried to make amends for that with something called the Ameri-Asian Act in the early 80s. But what happened was that the Philippines sort of got the short end of the stick on that act that Congress passed. And it was supposed to allow Filipino kids of service members in the military to have an easier pathway to citizenship if the father disappeared. Okay? And for whatever reason, the Philippines got the short end of the stick. Frankly, it's of my belief that I just think there was so many people. I think there was so many Ameri-Asians that the government didn't want to pay the bill, the US government. I think that's the reality of it. Because we live in a rough world, folks. And, you know, I guess I've tried to be idealistic, and, you know, we try to talk about principles and stuff. And then sometimes I look at myself and I say, you know, I've had a really good relationship with my son. But the fact is, I've spent a lot of time away working, you know, because I have to at the same time. And that's the best way I can survive right now and get ahead is like a truck driver, man. The best way to stack cash for me. Because we live in this thing called the world and reality. And the world's filled with exploitation and people taking advantage and cruelty and poverty and people taking advantage, and you get honest people that are rich, you get corrupt people, and it's the same with the poor. And this is like reality, man. And you know, it's like, I think there's something special about the Philippines because they've kind of created this simplistic way of living, I think, for the family, like a very family-centric culture. And I look at the way, you know, Zachary's mom, you know, she's with him every day at school. Every day she takes him to school and she sits there and waits for him every day. She's with him constantly. She's fully dedicated to her son, to our son. Excuse me. And, you know, that's not working at a job and paying the bills financially necessarily, but I see that kind of love and that kind of dedication. You know, and that's like a real thing. And I don't think you can put a price on that, you know. But yeah, she's with him. she sits there at school for hours while he's in school and just, you know, waits for him. And it just struck me. It just kind of made me a little bit emotional because it was beautiful, you know. And I'm very grateful for that. And I think we owe a lot of gratitude to a lot of the Filipino moms that have, especially expats, you know, in my situation, and other people who have to work overseas and come back and forth and this and that because life's complex. And I just think they deserve more credit. And I'm not on board with a lot of the narratives in general in social media about Filipino scammers and expats playing the victim out here because I'm not feeling it. I think it's an old effort at control. I think it's a negative narrative. I think it's propaganda. I just think it's uncool. I think it's wrong. But anyway, I just wanted to say that. I mean, we don't always see that in social media. There's plenty of people that give nuanced conversations and, you know, balanced sides of these stories. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to dedicate this video to Filipino mothers and just, you know, if you haven't, send your gratitude and send your appreciation, man, you know. It's like, and I look at myself, you know, because I've been critical in the past of expats. And I'm like, well, you know, the reality is in recent years, like I said, I've had to spend a lot of time overseas and I'm not always there physically. And yeah, I'm making the money and I'm, you know, building a house and all that and providing financially, but I mean, that's not everything in life, right? So I'm really, really grateful for the times that I've had here, you know, and I'm grateful for the time and for the bond that I formed, you know, with my son during our stays together. It's undeniable, and he's just so happy. You know, it's so great to see him happy and to have a sense of humor, you know, because I don't think, you know, kids sort of have to take on all the plights and all the seriousness of the world, right? And anyway, I just think that's one of the beautiful things about the Philippines is one of the most misunderstood things is in these developing countries is that I think Filipinos like it this way. You know, I think they like the family-centric type of culture, the simple way of living. I'm not sure they're as driven with all their focus on work as we are in the West, and I think that's a good thing. You know, that's just my opinion, but it's kind of, you know, one of the concerns I've had as a vlogger is just kind of the future of, you know, expats in this country, because I think more and more are coming here because historically the dollar has been stronger compared to the peso. Even with inflation goes a little bit higher in the Philippines than it does in the US, but the peso has weakened, the dollar's gotten stronger historically, and the purchasing power here is much better. But anyway, so a lot of people are going to be moving here for economic reasons and for more exposure from vlogs, and that has obviously pros and cons. But just one concern I have is for the Filipinos watching, because 80% of them will say, sure, we welcome all Americans, we welcome them, that's all great, but yeah, you know, mark my words, that might have a tipping point, because I don't mean to be self-loathing about my own culture, but I think with certain types of groups we could be attracted to these countries. If there's too many, it might not have the same warm sentiment in the future, okay? Because us Westerners, especially Americans, we have a tendency to maybe in some ways colonize, to not assimilate so much, to kind of overvalue our money in terms of how we treat people, how we treat cultures, and what we're entitled to. And I think some of those attitudes, too much of it, could obviously be problematic for both this culture and for the foreigner's experience. So it's just something I want to throw out there. But anyway, send your love to the Filipino mothers out there, and if you haven't, just you know, send your appreciation. All right, it's Captain Trucker. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Appreciate you watching. Bye-bye.